The scent of pine and winter filled my lungs as I hurried through the forest, my threadbare cloak offering little protection against the biting cold. Moonlight filtered through bare branches, casting skeletal shadows across the snow-covered ground. My breath formed clouds in the frigid air as I clutched my basket tighter, the herbs I'd gathered rustling against the wicker. Our village was preparing for the winter solstice, a time when we traditionally paid tribute to the Alpha King who ruled our lands. I wasn't supposed to be out alone, especially not at dusk when the forest belonged to creatures far more dangerous than humans. But my grandmother had fallen ill, and the herbs that might ease her fever only bloomed under the light of the waning moon. Just be invisible, Elowen, I whispered to myself, repeating my grandmother's lifelong advice. Small and invisible is how you survive. I'd always been good at being invisible. In a world where strength determined worth, I existed in the margins. Too frail to work the fields, too quiet to command attention, I had learned to move through life unnoticed. My pale blonde hair, almost white in the moonlight, was the only part of me that ever drew unwanted eyes. I kept it tucked beneath my hood, another lesson from my grandmother. My fingers brushed against the silver pendant hidden beneath my dress, a wolf with eyes of pale blue stone. My mother's final gift before she disappeared into these same woods 7 winters ago. "Remember who you are," she had whispered, clasping it around my neck. "When everything else is taken from you, this truth remains." I never understood what truth she meant, but the pendant had become my talisman, my guide when fear threatened to overwhelm me. The snap of a twig froze me mid-step. The forest had gone eerily silent, the way it does when a predator is near. I pressed myself against the rough bark of an ancient oak, willing my racing heart to quiet. Through the trees, I glimpsed torches. Not village hunters. Their lights would be fewer, their movements cautious. This was a procession, proud and purposeful. The king's men. Stories of their brutality circulated through our village like ghost tales. Young women who caught their eye sometimes disappeared, especially those with unusual features. My hand instinctively rose to my hood, ensuring my pale hair remained hidden. I should have waited until they passed, should have remained pressed against that tree, small and invisible. But as they drew closer, something pulled at me, a scent carried on the wind, something primal and compelling that made my blood sing in a way I couldn't understand. I leaned forward, just slightly, just enough to glimpse through the branches, and that's when I saw him. The Alpha King walked at the center of his guards, taller than any man I'd ever seen. Unlike his men, who carried torches, he needed none. Darkness seemed to embrace him like an old friend. His face was all sharp angles, a study in controlled power, but it was his eyes that stole my breath. Amber and gold, gleaming with an inner light that was not quite human. Time slowed as those eyes suddenly shifted, looking directly where I hid. A shiver that had nothing to do with cold raced down my spine. No one had ever truly seen me before. In that moment, I felt stripped bare, as if all my secrets lay exposed for him to examine. His nostrils flared slightly, and I knew with sudden certainty that he could smell my fear. I stumbled backward, my basket falling from nerveless fingers. Herbs scattered across snow as I turned to flee. I didn't get 3 steps before strong hands seized my arms. A guard with a face like carved stone dragged me forward, towards the king who hadn't moved, who simply watched with those unnerving eyes. "A spy, your majesty," the guard growled, forcing me to my knees. The king's silence weighed heavier than any shout. His boots entered my downcast vision, soft leather that spoke of wealth beyond my imagination. A hand, large, scarred, powerful, reached down and grasped my chin, tilting my face upward. His touch burned against my skin, not with pain, but with something I had no name for. His expression remained impassive as he studied me, but something flickered in those golden eyes when the hood fell back, revealing my hair gleaming pale in the moonlight. "What is your name?" His voice was deep, with a roughness that suggested he didn't use it often. "Elowen." The word escaped in a whisper. "Why are you in my forest, Elowen?" Each syllable of my name in his mouth felt like a claim. "My grandmother is sick. The fever root only grows. You risk death for herbs." His interruption wasn't unkind, merely puzzled, as if my human concerns were foreign to him. Before I could answer, a horn sounded in the distance, 3 short blasts that transformed the king's expression from curiosity to cold fury. The grip on my arm tightened as the guards tensed around us. "Border breach," one of them reported. The king's gaze never left my face. "Bring her." "Your Majesty," I protested, finding courage I didn't know I possessed. "My grandmother needs—" "Your village will be searched," he cut me off. "If your story proves true, arrangements will be made for the old woman." His tone brooked no argument. "But you come with me." I was lifted onto his horse before he mounted behind me, his chest a wall of heat against my back. His arm snaked around my waist, holding me securely as the horse began to move. The forest blurred around us as we rode, the king's men falling into formation. "Why?" I managed to ask, the word nearly lost to the wind. His breath was warm against my ear as he answered. "Because you smell like moonlight and secrets, little wolf, and I haven't been curious about anything in a very long time." Dawn broke as we emerged from the forest onto a cliffside road I'd never seen. Below us sprawled a fortress of dark stone and iron, massive and ancient, surrounded by walls that seemed to grow from the mountain itself. The fortress of the Alpha King, a place of legends and nightmares. A place no ordinary human ever entered and returned to tell of it. "Welcome to your new home, Eloan," the king said, and though I couldn't see his face, something in his voice sent another shiver through me. Possession, satisfaction, and underneath it all, a strange note that sounded almost like relief. The pendant beneath my dress grew warm against my skin as we descended toward the fortress gates. My grandmother's words echoed in my memory. "There are things about you that even you don't know, Eloan, truths hidden for your protection." Whatever those truths were, I feared I was about to discover them in the den of the Alpha King. As we passed beneath the towering gates, wolves howled from somewhere deep within the fortress, not in alarm, but in welcome. And strangest of all, something inside me wanted to answer their call. The fortress was alive with movement as we entered the main courtyard. People, though something in their fluid grace made me question if they were entirely human, stepped aside as the king dismounted, their eyes downcast in deference. When he reached up to lift me from the horse, I flinched involuntarily. A slight furrow appeared between his brows, the first crack in his impassive mask. "I won't hurt you," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. His hand spanned my waist as he set me on my feet, lingering a moment longer than necessary. I felt small beside him, fragile in a way that had always been my shame in the village, yet here, surrounded by his kind, my smallness felt different, not weakness, but something else I couldn't define. The king turned to a woman with sharp features and auburn hair pulled into a severe braid. "Elena, prepare chambers in the east wing." Elena's gaze swept over me, assessing and dismissive in one glance. "The dungeons would be more appropriate for a human trespasser, Your Majesty." "She's not a prisoner," his tone ended any further discussion. "And I doubt she's entirely human." My heart stuttered. What did he mean, not entirely human? I wanted to protest, to insist on the simple truth of my existence, but the words died on my lips as the king's hand pressed lightly against the small of my back, guiding me forward. The interior of the fortress was a contradiction. Brutally stark stone corridors giving way to unexpectedly beautiful halls adorned with tapestries and ancient weapons. Servants scurried around us, stealing curious glances. None met my eyes directly, except for a young boy with a shock of red hair, who openly stared until an older woman cuffed him gently and pulled him away. "You have questions," the king said as we climbed a winding staircase. It wasn't a question. "Why am I here?" I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. He paused, turning to study me with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. "Your scent is unusual. You carry markers of my kind, yet you live as human. Your kind?" Though I asked, part of me already knew the answer, had always known it in some deep, wordless way. The stories whispered in the village, the warnings about the forest, the reason we paid tribute each winter. "Shifters," he said simply. "Wolves." The word settled between us, heavy with implication. My pendant burned against my skin, as if responding to the truth spoken aloud. "I'm not—" I began, but he silenced me with a look. You may not shift, but the blood runs in you. Diluted, perhaps, but present. His head tilted slightly. You didn't know. It wasn't a question, but I shook my head anyway. My grandmother raised me. My mother disappeared when I was young. My father, I never knew him. Something flashed in his eyes, recognition or suspicion. I couldn't tell. What was your mother's name? Lyrian, I answered, watching his face carefully. No reaction. Whatever he might have suspected remained hidden behind that controlled exterior. We reached a door of dark, polished wood. The king pushed it open, revealing chambers more luxurious than any I had ever seen. A massive bed with furs and silken coverings dominated one wall. A fire already burned in the hearth, casting warm light over comfortable seating and a table laden with fruit and bread. Rest, he said. Bathe. Eat. Elena will bring suitable clothing. He gestured to a door I hadn't noticed. There's a bathing chamber through there. I remained frozen at the threshold, overwhelmed and suspicious. And then what happens to me? For the first time, something like amusement touched his features. Then, little wolf, we discover who you really are. He turned to leave, but paused when I called out, You haven't told me your name. The boldness of my own question surprised me. He looked back, that strange half-smile still playing at his lips. Cassius. My name is Cassius. After he left, I stood motionless in the center of the room, trying to process everything that had happened since I'd ventured into the forest. My grandmother must be frantic with worry. And what had the king, Cassius, meant about discovering who I really was? The silver pendant seemed to pulse against my skin, a silent reminder of my mother's final words. Remember who you are. Had she known this day would come? Exhaustion suddenly overwhelmed me. I moved to the window, gazing out at the fortress grounds below. Guards patrolled the walls, their movements precise and coordinated. Beyond them stretched the forest, and somewhere within it, my village, my old life. I wasn't naive enough to think I could simply walk out. Whatever Cassius wanted from me, whatever he thought I was, he wouldn't let me leave until he had his answers. And perhaps, most disturbing of all, part of me didn't want to leave, not yet. The same inexplicable pull I'd felt in the forest lingered, a curiosity about this place and these people who might hold the key to mysteries I'd never known were mine. The bathing chamber contained a sunken tub, already filled with steaming, scented water. I shed my dirty clothes and slipped in, letting the heat ease my aching muscles. As dirt and fear washed away, I began to think more clearly. I wasn't powerless here. I had my wits, my knowledge of herbs and healing, skills honed by years helping my grandmother tend to the village sick, and I had the advantage of being underestimated, something I'd turned to my benefit many times before. By the time Elena arrived with clothing, I had formed at least the beginning of a plan. I would learn everything I could about this place, about Cassius, about what they thought I was. Knowledge was its own kind of power. The garments she brought were finer than anything I'd ever worn, a dress of deep green that brought out the color of my eyes, soft leather boots, and undergarments of a material so fine it felt like wearing nothing at all. The king requests your presence at dinner, Elena said, her tone making it clear this was a command, not an invitation. I'll return to escort you when it's time. After she left, I explored my chambers more thoroughly. The window was too high for escape, and I suspected the door was guarded, even though Cassius had insisted I wasn't a prisoner. A bookshelf against one wall held volumes in languages I couldn't read, their spines adorned with strange symbols that seemed to shift when I looked at them directly. As the light outside began to fade, I steeled myself for the evening ahead. Cassius clearly thought I was something special, something like him. I would let him believe that, encourage it even, until I understood enough to negotiate my return home. Elena returned as promised, leading me through corridors and down a grand staircase to a dining hall where a long table was set for many guests. At its head sat Cassius, transformed from the forest warrior I'd first seen. He wore formal attire now, a deep blue tunic embroidered with silver threads that caught the light from dozens of candles. His dark hair was pulled back, accentuating the sharp angles of his face. All conversation ceased when I entered. Dozens of eyes turned to assess me, some curious, others openly hostile. I fought the urge to shrink back, to become invisible as I always had. Instead, I straightened my spine and lifted my chin, meeting their stares with a calmness I didn't feel. Cassius stood, a subtle signal that sent the entire room rising to their feet. My honored guests, may I present Elowen, our special visitor from the northern village. He gestured to an empty seat at his right hand. The placement wasn't lost on me, nor, judging by the whispers that erupted, on anyone else present. This was a position of honor, of significance. As I walked toward him, I felt the weight of a particular gaze. A woman seated near Cassius watched me with undisguised contempt. Beautiful in a cold, severe way, with raven hair and eyes like chips of ice, she wore a dress of blood red that seemed designed to draw attention. Seraphina. Cassius acknowledged her with a nod before turning back to me. My advisor's daughter, and a member of my council. The way he said it suggested I should understand the significance. I didn't. But I recognized a threat when I saw one. Seraphina's eyes narrowed as I took my seat. How unusual, she said, her voice honey-sweet with underlying venom. To have a human at the high table, and during such troubled times. Troubled times? I asked before I could stop myself. Cassius's hand came to rest on mine, a warning touch. Border disputes. Nothing for you to concern yourself with. But surely our guest should know why she was brought here, Seraphina pressed, leaning forward. The prophecy speaks of... Enough. One word from Cassius, spoken softly but with unmistakable authority, silenced her instantly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. The feast began, servants bringing course after course of foods more exotic than any I'd ever tasted. Conversation resumed around us, but I noticed how everyone carefully avoided the topic Seraphina had tried to broach. What prophecy? I asked Cassius quietly, when the general attention had shifted elsewhere. His golden eyes studied me over the rim of his goblet. Old stories. Superstitions. About me? About someone like you, he corrected. Someone caught between two worlds, who might bridge them. Before I could ask more, a commotion at the entrance to the hall drew everyone's attention. A guard rushed in, breathing hard, blood staining his uniform. Your Majesty, he gasped, dropping to one knee. The eastern border has fallen. Nathaniel's forces have breached our first defenses. They'll reach the fortress by tomorrow's nightfall. Cassius rose, his entire demeanor shifting from controlled civility to lethal focus in an instant. How many? Hundreds, and they've brought the silver weapons. A murmur of fear rippled through the hall. I didn't understand the significance, but the reaction was unmistakable. Even Seraphina's composed mask slipped, revealing genuine alarm. Clear the hall, Cassius ordered. Council members remain. As people hurriedly began to leave, he turned to me. His expression had hardened, but when our eyes met, something softened fractionally. You should return to your chambers. Let me help, I said impulsively. I know healing herbs, treatments for wounds. Surprise flickered across his face. You would help us? I help those who need it, I replied simply. That's who I am. For a long moment, he regarded me as if seeing me for the first time. Then he nodded once, sharply. Stay then. But understand, what you hear in this room cannot leave it. As the hall emptied, leaving only those Cassius trusted most, I realized I had just crossed some invisible line. Whatever game of secrets and half-truths had been playing out around me had suddenly become deadly serious. And I, Elowen the Invisible, the girl who had spent her life in the margins, now sat at the center of a war council in the fortress of the Alpha King. The council meeting lasted well into the night. Maps were spread across the dining table, wine goblets hastily pushed aside as Cassius and his advisors plotted defense strategies. I remained quiet, absorbing everything. The locations mentioned, the names of allies and enemies, the strengths and vulnerabilities of the fortress. The name Nathaniel was spoken with particular venom. A rival Alpha, I gathered, who ruled territories to the east and had long desired to expand his domain. He's been waiting for this moment, growled a battle-scarred warrior named Thorn. Testing our borders for weaknesses since the last full moon. What changed? Cassius asked, his fingers tracing the mountain passes on the map. Why attack now with winter setting in? The prophecy, Seraphina said, her icy gaze sliding to me. He knows she's here. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to me, expressions ranging from suspicion to curiosity to outright hostility. How would he know that? Cassius's voice was dangerously soft. No one answered immediately. The silence stretched until a man with silver at his temples, introduced earlier as Roland, Cassius's chief advisor and Seraphina's father, cleared his throat. There was a traitor in the northern village 3 days ago. One of Nathaniel's spies, perhaps. Or someone in this room sent word, Cassius suggested, his gaze sweeping across his council. I watched their faces, noting who maintained eye contact and who looked away. Seraphina met the king's gaze unflinchingly, but there was something calculating in her expression that made me uneasy. What exactly does this prophecy say? I asked, unable to contain my curiosity any longer. And why would it matter to this Nathaniel? Cassius exchanged a glance with Roland, who nodded almost imperceptibly. The prophecy speaks of a bridge between worlds, Roland explained, his voice carrying the weight of history. A female with moonlight in her hair and humanity in her heart, who would determine the future of all shifter kinds. In her hands would rest the power to unite or destroy. That's vague, I said, earning a few surprised looks at my boldness. Roland's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. Prophecies often are, but the timing aligns. Tensions between the packs have never been higher. Resources grow scarcer each winter. Nathaniel believes in the old ways, that shifters should rule over humans, not hide from them or trade with them as we do. And I'm supposed to, what? Stop a war? The absurdity of it struck me suddenly. I'm a healer's apprentice from a village so small it barely has a name. I've never even left the northern woods until yesterday. Yet here you are, Cassius said quietly, with shifter blood flowing through your veins, found exactly when and where the prophecy foretold. A heavy silence fell. I fought the urge to touch my pendant, not wanting to draw attention to it. Whatever truth it represented suddenly felt dangerous. We continue with our defense preparations, Cassius finally said, straightening. Doubled patrols on all walls. Move the vulnerable to the inner chambers. And, he added with particular emphasis, no one speaks of the prophecy or our guest outside this room. As the meeting disbanded, he gestured for me to remain. When we were alone, he came to stand before me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his gaze. You're taking this remarkably well, he observed, finding out you might be part of an ancient prophecy. Caught in the middle of a pack war, I shrugged, aiming for nonchalance. I'm still deciding if any of this is real, or if I've fallen asleep by my grandmother's hearth and dreamed it all. And if it is real? His voice dropped lower, something in his tone making my pulse quicken. What then, little wolf? Then I suppose I need to understand my part in it, I answered honestly. Starting with what makes you so certain I have shifter blood when I've lived 17 years, showing no sign of it. He studied me for a long moment, then held out his hand. Come with me. Curiosity overriding caution, I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong, as he led me from the hall and through corridors I hadn't seen before. We descended a spiral staircase, the temperature dropping with each step. The walls here were older, rougher, carved directly from the mountain itself. We emerged into a vast cavern lit by torches in iron sconces. At its center lay a pool of still, dark water that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. The seeing pool, Cassius explained, leading me closer. It reveals truths hidden from ordinary sight. The surface of the water was unnaturally still, like polished obsidian. My reflection stared back at me, pale and uncertain in the torchlight. What am I supposed to see? I whispered, afraid to break the hushed silence of the cavern. Look deeper, he urged, his hand moving to the small of my back. I leaned forward, focusing on the water. Gradually, my reflection began to change. My eyes, normally a clear green, took on an amber glow similar to Cassius's. My features sharpened subtly, becoming more angular, more predatory. That's not me, I protested, though the transformation felt strangely right, like recognizing a part of myself I'd never acknowledged. It's who you could be, Cassius said. The shifter blood in you is dormant, not absent. His hand moved to my shoulder, turning me to face him. The full moon is tomorrow night. With the right catalyst, you might complete your first shift. Fear and strange exhilaration mingled in my chest. And if I don't want to, the choice should be yours, he conceded. Though something in his tone suggested it wasn't that simple. But consider this. A human stands little chance in the conflict that's coming. A shifter, even a new one, would have better odds of survival. Is that why you brought me here? To turn me into a weapon for your war? His expression darkened. I brought you here because leaving you in that village was no longer safe. For you or for them. He gestured back to the pool. Look again. Reluctantly, I turned. The water's surface rippled, though there was no breeze in the cavern. New images formed. My village in flames, people running in terror as wolf-like creatures tore through the streets. Among them, a massive black wolf with eyes like ice directed the slaughter. Nathaniel? I guessed, my voice barely audible. Cassius nodded grimly. If he believes you're the one from the prophecy, he'll leave nothing standing to find you. Your village was spared only because we reached you first. The weight of responsibility settled over me like a physical burden. All those lives, my grandmother, the children I'd helped deliver, the elders whose aches I'd eased with poultices, all depending on choices I didn't understand and powers I didn't know how to control. How do I stop this? I asked, straightening my spine. For the first time, Cassius looked uncertain. I don't know. The prophecy doesn't specify. It only says the bridge between worlds will either unite the packs or destroy them. Helpful, I muttered sarcastically. To my surprise, a low chuckle escaped him. Indeed, the ancestors weren't known for their clarity. Our eyes met over the seeing pool, and something shifted between us, a recognition, perhaps, that we were both caught in events larger than ourselves, doing our best to navigate treacherous waters. Rest tonight, he said finally. Tomorrow we begin preparing you, prophecy or no prophecy. Back in my chambers, sleep eluded me despite my exhaustion. I stood by the window, watching the moon rise over the mountains. Almost full, its light cast long shadows across the fortress grounds, where guards moved in constant vigilance. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Before I could respond, the door opened to reveal Serafina, still in her blood-red dress from dinner. "May I enter?" she asked with false sweetness, already stepping inside. I nodded cautiously, sensing this wasn't a social call. She circled the room slowly, trailing her fingers over surfaces as if checking for dust. Comfortable accommodations for a village girl. The king has been generous, I replied neutrally. Cassius has always had a weakness for strays. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, especially pretty ones with sad stories. I said nothing, waiting for her to reveal her true purpose. You should know, she continued, picking up a silver hairbrush from the dressing table, that many have tried to claim the prophecy before. Village girls with unusual coloring, human women who caught a shifter's eye. She set the brush down with deliberate care. None of them survived the full moon. A chill ran through me. Is that a threat? A history lesson? She moved closer, her scent, something sharp and floral, filling my nostrils. The fortress has a long memory, Elowen, and I've been by Cassius's side for decades. I've watched pretenders come and go. I never claimed to be anything, I pointed out. It was Cassius who brought me here. Yes, she agreed, her eyes narrowing. And that's what makes you dangerous. He believes in you, perhaps even more than you believe in yourself. She leaned closer. But consider this. If you're not the one from the prophecy, you're leading us to destruction for nothing. The packs will tear each other apart, and the blame will rest on your shoulders. With that parting thought, she glided to the door. Sleep well, village girl. Tomorrow brings the full moon, and with it, the truth. After she left, I sank onto the edge of the bed, her words echoing in my mind. What if she was right? What if I wasn't what Cassius thought I was? Innocent people would die because of his misplaced faith in me. My hand rose to the pendant at my neck, drawing comfort from its familiar weight. Remember who you are, my mother had said. But who was I, really? Dawn broke with a commotion in the corridors. I had barely slept, but adrenaline surged through me as my door burst open. Elena rushed in, her usual composure fractured. "Get dressed quickly," she ordered, throwing open the wardrobe and pulling out a simple tunic and leather trousers. "The outer wall has been breached. Nathaniel's scouts were spotted in the forest." I changed hurriedly, following her through corridors now buzzing with activity. Shifters in various states of readiness rushed past, some carrying weapons, others herding children toward the inner chambers. Elena led me to a room I hadn't seen before. Circular, with high windows and walls lined with weapons. Cassius stood at its center, deep in conversation with Thorn and several other warriors. He looked up as I entered, and something in his expression shifted. "You should be in the secure chambers with the others," he said, dismissing the warriors with a gesture. "I want to help," I insisted. "You said yourself that Nathaniel is coming for me. I won't hide while others fight my battle." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. But you stay by my side." Throughout the day, I shadowed Cassius as he prepared his pack for the coming assault. I learned more about shifter society in those hours than I had in all my life. They were organized, disciplined, with a clear hierarchy that centered on Cassius, but allowed for individual strengths to be utilized. By midday, scouts reported that Nathaniel's main force was moving faster than expected. They would reach the fortress by nightfall, just as the full moon rose. "The timing isn't coincidental," Roland observed grimly as we gathered again in the council chamber. "He wants us at our most volatile, when the shift is hardest to control." "He also wants her," Cassius said, nodding toward me. "The prophecy speaks of the full moon as the catalyst." I felt the weight of expectation pressing down on me. "And if nothing happens, if I don't shift, then we defend the fortress as we always have," Cassius replied firmly, "with or without prophecies." But the worried glances exchanged around the table told a different story. They needed me to be what the prophecy promised. Their hope, their very survival, hinged on it. As the sun began its descent, Cassius took me to the highest tower of the fortress. From there, we could see across the valley to the forest's edge where, even now, shadows moved among the trees, Nathaniel's advance forces taking position. "Are you afraid?" he asked, his voice gentle in a way I hadn't heard before. "Terrified," I admitted, seeing no point in lying. "But not just of the battle." He turned to me, his golden eyes reflecting the setting sun. "Of what then?" "Of failing. Of not being what you all need me to be." I looked away, unable to bear the intensity of his gaze. What if Seraphina is right? What if I'm just a village girl with unusual coloring, and all of this is a mistake? Cassius was silent for so long I thought he might not answer. When he did, his words surprised me. "When I found you in the forest, I wasn't looking for the prophecy's fulfillment. I was patrolling, as I've done countless nights before." His hand came up, hesitantly, to brush a strand of pale hair from my face. "But the moment I caught your scent, something in me recognized something in you. Not just shifter blood, though, that's there. Something essential. Something that called to parts of me I'd long buried." The intensity of his words, the raw honesty in them, left me speechless. "I don't know if you're the one from the prophecy, Elowen," he continued. "But I know you're not ordinary, and I know that finding you has already changed things that seemed unchangeable." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting us in twilight's blue shadows. Below, torches began to light along the fortress walls as defenders took their positions. In the distance, a horn sounded, 3 long blasts that carried on the wind. "Nathaniel's signal to attack," Cassius explained, his body tensing beside mine. As if in answer, the full moon began to rise, vast and luminous over the eastern mountains. Its light washed over us, and I felt a strange tingling beneath my skin, a restlessness in my bones I'd never experienced before. Cassius must have noticed the change in me, for he reached out to steady me. "It's beginning," he said, something like wonder in his voice. "The moonlight calls to your blood." Below us, the first wave of attackers emerged from the forest, wolves larger than natural, moving with coordinated purpose toward the fortress walls. The battle for the Alpha King's domain had begun, and I, caught between worlds, stood at the precipice of a transformation I didn't understand, drawn by moonlight and the golden eyes of the king who had claimed me. The moon's pull grew stronger as it rose higher in the night sky. My skin felt too tight, my senses heightening until the torchlight seemed blinding, the distant clash of weapons deafening. Every breath brought new information. The metallic tang of blood, the acrid scent of fear, the distinctive musk of shifters in battle form. "Stay with me," Cassius urged, his hand gripping mine as he led me down from the tower. "The first shift is disorienting. You'll need an anchor." We descended into chaos. The fortress had become a battlefield, defenders rushing to reinforce the inner walls as the outer perimeter fell. Wounded shifters were carried to a makeshift infirmary in the Great Hall, their agonized cries sending shivers down my spine. I paused at the entrance to the hall, pulled by an instinct I didn't recognize. I should help them. Cassius hesitated, clearly torn between keeping me protected and utilizing whatever skills I possessed. "Be quick," he finally said. "I need to coordinate the western defense. Stay inside these walls, understand?" I nodded, already moving toward the nearest wounded shifter, a young female with a vicious gash across her torso that wasn't healing as it should. "Silver weapons," explained an older healer working frantically nearby. "Slows the regeneration, causes infection if not treated properly." My training took over. I examined wounds, prepared poultices from the herbs available, and directed those with minor injuries to help with the more serious cases. The knowledge I'd gathered from my grandmother, remedies I'd used for human ailments, proved surprisingly effective for shifters when modified for their stronger constitutions. Time blurred as I worked, the strange energy beneath my skin channeled into healing rather than transformation. I found myself instinctively knowing which herbs would counteract the silver poisoning, my fingers working with newfound precision. "You have the touch," the older healer, Mira, she'd introduced herself, remarked as we worked side by side. "Rare, even among born shifters. I'm not..." I began automatically, then stopped. After everything I'd seen, everything I'd felt since entering the fortress, denial seemed pointless. "I don't know what I am anymore." Mira's eyes, a warm amber similar to Cassius's, crinkled with understanding. "The blood knows, even when the mind forgets." A commotion at the hall entrance drew our attention. Guards rushed to form a defensive line as the massive doors shuddered under some external force. "They've breached the inner courtyard," someone shouted. Mira thrust a leather satchel into my hands. "Take these to the eastern passage. There's a hidden chamber where the children and elders are sheltered." "They'll need healing there too," I hesitated, remembering Cassius's instruction to stay put. But the doors wouldn't hold much longer, and the wounded here couldn't be moved quickly enough. Decision made, I slipped out a side entrance, following Mira's hurried directions through narrow corridors. The sounds of fighting grew louder as I neared the eastern wing, suggesting Nathaniel's forces had penetrated deeper than anyone anticipated. Rounding a corner, I collided with a figure moving stealthily in the opposite direction. Strong hands steadied me, then tightened painfully as I found myself face to face with Seraphina. "Going somewhere?" she asked, her glacial eyes assessing me with calculated interest. "To the sheltered chamber," I answered, holding up the medicine satchel as evidence. "Mira sent me." "How convenient." Her grip didn't loosen. "The eastern passage leads directly past the king's private chambers, where, I'm told, certain artifacts of power are kept, artifacts that might be useful to someone hoping to influence a pack war." I stared at her in genuine confusion. "I'm trying to help the wounded, not steal artifacts." "Of course you are." Her smile was razor-sharp, the helpful little human, always in exactly the right place at exactly the wrong time. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I've watched you since you arrived, village girl. So eager to learn our ways, to map our defenses, to stand at Cassius's right hand." Understanding dawned, cold and sickening. "You think I'm working with Nathaniel?" "I think," she replied, drawing a silver dagger from her sleeve, "that you're the perfect distraction. While Cassius fixates on you and your supposed destiny, Nathaniel slips past our defenses with suspicious ease." The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. I was kidnapped from my village less than 2 days ago. How exactly would I have coordinated with a rival alpha I'd never heard of until yesterday? Serafina's expression didn't change, but the dagger pressed against my side, not cutting, but threatening. Perhaps you've been his creature all along. A plant in that village, waiting for the right moment. Your convenient discovery by Cassius. Your ignorance of shifter ways. It's all too perfect. A crash from somewhere nearby interrupted whatever she might have said next. The corridor shook, dust raining from the ceiling as something heavy impacted the walls. Serafina's momentary distraction was all I needed. I twisted from her grip, the movement instinctive and more fluid than any I'd managed before. The medicine satchel fell, spilling herbs across the stone floor as I put distance between us. Her eyes widened, then narrowed with new calculation. So the shift is beginning. Good. Let's see what you really are. She lunged with inhuman speed, the silver dagger slashing toward my throat. I should have died in that moment. Untrained, unshifted, caught by surprise. But something else moved through me, ancient instinct, blood memory, the call of the full moon overhead. I ducked with impossible quickness, my body responding to commands I hadn't consciously given. Serafina recovered quickly, circling me with predatory grace. Interesting. You move like one of us, but without the full shift, you're still just prey. She attacked again, her movements blurring with speed. This time her dagger caught my arm, opening a shallow cut that burned like fire, silver's effect on shifter blood. Pain sharpened my focus. As she prepared another strike, I saw what I hadn't before, the subtle telegraphing of her movements, the fractional shift of weight that preceded each attack. I dodged again, this time countering with a strike of my own that caught her by surprise. My nails, suddenly longer, sharper, raking across her cheek. Blood welled from the scratches, and Serafina's expression transformed from cold calculation to primal rage. Enough games. She began to shift. Not the complete transformation to wolf form, but a partial change that made her more dangerous. Her features elongated slightly, her teeth sharpening to points, her hands curving into lethal claws. I backed away, knowing I was outmatched. Whatever changes were happening in me, they weren't happening fast enough to save me from a born shifter intent on murder. Serafina. The voice, Cassius's voice, cracked like thunder down the corridor. She froze, her body caught mid-shift. Slowly, she turned to face her king, who stood watching us with barely contained fury radiating from every line of his powerful frame. "Explain," he commanded, the single word vibrating with authority. Serafina straightened, her features smoothing back to human, though her eyes remained unchanged. Predator's eyes, cold and assessing. "I caught her sneaking toward your chambers, Your Majesty. Given the suspicious timing of the attack coinciding with her arrival, I thought it prudent to investigate." "By attacking someone under my protection?" Cassius asked, his tone deceptively quiet. "I was defending the pack," she insisted, "as is my duty." Cassius's gaze shifted to me, taking in the bloody cut on my arm, the defensive posture I still maintained. Something in his expression softened fractionally. "Your duty," he said, returning his attention to Serafina, "is to follow my commands. I ordered the eastern passage secured 10 minutes ago. Yet here you are, nowhere near your post." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Serafina's perfect features. "I was patrolling for intruders." "You were pursuing your own agenda," Cassius cut her off, "as you have been since Eloan arrived." The tension between them crackled in the air, years of complex history evident in the way they faced each other. I sensed there was more to their relationship than advisor and king. Something personal, perhaps even intimate at one time. "Go to your post," Cassius finally ordered. "We'll discuss this after the battle is won." For a moment, I thought she might refuse. Her eyes darted between us, calculations running behind that icy gaze. Then she bowed, a gesture so minimal it bordered on insubordination. "As you command, my king." With a last venomous glance at me, she disappeared down the corridor. As soon as she was gone, Cassius moved to my side, examining the cut on my arm with gentle fingers. "Silver," he murmured, his expression darkening. "She meant to kill you. She thinks I'm working with Nathaniel. I explained, wincing as he probed the wound, that I'm some sort of spy or saboteur. Seraphina sees threats everywhere, he said, tearing a strip from his tunic to bind my arm. Especially in those she perceives as rivals. Rivals for what? His eyes met mine, something unspoken passing between us. For influence. For position. He paused, his hand stilling on my arm. For me. The admission hung in the air, fraught with implications I wasn't ready to examine. Before I could respond, another crash shook the fortress, this one closer and more violent than before. "We need to move," Cassius said, his tone shifting back to the Alpha King. "The battle goes poorly. Nathaniel brought more forces than we anticipated, and they're using the silver weapons with precision, targeting our strongest fighters." "The sheltered chamber," I began, remembering my original mission, "is already compromised," he finished grimly. "We're evacuating through the mountain tunnels." Horror washed over me, the wounded in the great hall, being moved as we speak. He took my hand, his grip firm but gentle. "But there's something we must do first." He led me through passages I hadn't seen before, deeper into the heart of the fortress. We descended stairs carved directly into the mountain, the air growing cooler and heavy with the scent of earth and old stone. "Where are we going?" I asked, as the sounds of battle faded behind us. "To the heart chamber," he replied. "The sacred space where alphas have communed with their wolves for generations." We emerged into a cavern similar to the one housing the seeing pool, but smaller, more intimate. At its center stood a circle of standing stones, each carved with symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. Moonlight streamed through an opening in the ceiling, creating a perfect circle of silvery light in the center of the stone ring. "The full moon is at its apex," Cassius said, his voice taking on a ceremonial quality. "If you're going to shift, it will be now. In this place of power, fear and anticipation warred within me. What if I can't? Then we find another way." His hands came to rest on my shoulders, warm and steady. "But I believe in you, Elowen, not because of a prophecy, but because of what I've seen in you since you arrived. Courage, compassion, strength you don't yet recognize." He guided me to the center of the stone circle, where the moonlight fell most directly. Then, to my surprise, he stepped back, leaving me alone in the pool of light. "I can't do this for you," he explained, seeing my confusion. "The first shift must come from within, a recognition and acceptance of your true nature." As the moonlight bathed me, the strange sensations I'd been experiencing intensified. My skin prickled, my bones ached, and my vision sharpened until I could see details in the darkest corners of the cavern. "What do I do?" I asked, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Listen to your blood," Cassius instructed. "Feel the call of your ancestors. Remember who you are." My mother's words echoed in his. The pendant at my throat grew warm, almost hot against my skin. I pulled it out, letting it catch the moonlight. The blue stone eyes of the wolf seemed to glow from within. "That pendant," Cassius said softly, recognition in his voice. "Where did you get it?" "My mother gave it to me before she disappeared." I closed my hand around it, drawing strength from its familiar contours. It was her final gift. Something shifted in Cassius's expression. Surprise, then a dawning realization that transformed into wonder. "Lyrienne," he whispered. "She survived." The name, my mother's name in his mouth, sent shockwaves through me. "You knew her?" Before he could answer, the cavern door burst open. Thorn stumbled in, bloody and battered, supporting a barely conscious Roland. "My king," he gasped. "The fortress is lost. Nathaniel's forces have breached the inner sanctum. He comes for the girl." Cassius's face hardened into the mask of the Alpha King once more. "How long?" "Minutes," Thorn replied grimly. "The last defenders buy us time with their lives." Roland, rousing slightly, reached out a trembling hand. "The tunnels, sealed by betrayal." "Seraphina," I guessed, the pieces falling into place. "She's been working with Nathaniel all along." Cassius's growl was barely human, rage transforming his features. "Get Roland to the escape path behind the altar stone," he ordered Thorn. "I'll hold them here." "And the girl?" Thorn asked, glancing at me. Goes with you. Cassius answered firmly. No. The word escaped me before I could consider it, surprising all of us with its force. I won't run. This isn't your battle, Elowen, Cassius argued, though I sensed his heart wasn't in it, isn't it? I stepped out of the moonlight, feeling its power still coursing through me. Nathaniel is coming for me. The prophecy centers on me, and if there's any chance I can prevent more bloodshed, I have to try. Thorn looked to Cassius, awaiting his command. The king studied me for a long moment, conflict evident in his golden eyes. Then, slowly, he nodded. Take Roland to safety, he told Thorn. We'll hold the heart chamber as long as we can. As they disappeared through a concealed door behind the altar stone, Cassius and I faced the main entrance together. The sounds of fighting grew closer. Shouts, growls, the clash of weapons. Whatever happens, Cassius said quietly, know that finding you was worth it all. He began to shift then, his transformation fluid and controlled despite the crisis surrounding us. His body elongated, muscles rippling beneath skin that darkened and sprouted thick fur. Within moments, where the man had stood, a massive wolf now crouched, silver black in coloring, with golden eyes that remained unmistakably Cassius. The pendant burned against my skin, and with it came a certainty I couldn't explain. I stepped back into the pool of moonlight, embracing its power rather than fighting it. Remember who you are, I whispered to myself, my mother's words becoming my mantra. The door to the heart chamber exploded inward in a shower of wood and stone. Through the dust stepped a man who could only be Nathaniel, tall and powerfully built, with eyes like chips of ice and an aura of barely contained violence. Behind him came Seraphina, her face alight with triumph, and a dozen shifters in various stages of transformation. The prophecy child, Nathaniel said, his voice deceptively soft as he regarded me. At last. Cassius, in wolf form, positioned himself between us, a growl rumbling from deep in his chest. Nathaniel smiled, the expression never reaching his cold eyes. Stand aside, Cassius. The girl belongs to me now, as does your kingdom. He gestured expansively. Your fortress falls. Your pack scatters. The prophecy will be fulfilled under my guidance, not yours. As he spoke, more of his soldiers poured into the chamber, surrounding us. Cassius's growl intensified, his powerful body tense to spring despite the overwhelming odds. The moonlight seemed to pulse around me, my skin burning with energy that demanded release. The pendant at my throat glowed with an inner light of its own, responding to something in the chamber, or in me. The choice was always mine, I said, the words coming from somewhere deep and instinctual. Not yours, not Cassius's, mine. Nathaniel's smile faltered. What choice, little human? Whether to unite or destroy? I stepped forward, placing a hand on Cassius's massive shoulder, drawing strength from his solid presence. The prophecy isn't about who possesses me. It's about what I choose to become. The pendant flared brighter, and with it, something inside me ignited. Ancient blood awakening to its true potential. Pain lanced through every cell as my body began to change, not fighting the transformation but surrendering to it. I fell to my knees as bones reshaped, muscles stretched, and senses expanded beyond human limitations. Unlike Cassius's controlled shift, mine was raw and primal, the first awakening of powers long dormant. The last thing I saw before my vision changed completely was Nathaniel's expression of shock transforming to fear, and Seraphina backing away, as if confronted by something she had never truly believed possible. Then the human part of me receded, and something older, wilder, took its place, a creature of moonlight and secrets. Just as Cassius had named me from the beginning, the world transformed through new eyes. Colors intensified, scents separated into complex layers of information, and sounds revealed stories written in the air. My body felt both lighter and more powerful, responding with fluid grace to commands I hadn't consciously given. I had shifted, not into an ordinary wolf, but something rarer. My fur was pale as moonlight, my eyes retaining their human green, rather than taking on the amber or gold common to shifters. The pendant that had hung around my human neck had somehow merged with my wolf form, its blue stone now a mark upon my chest, glowing with inner light. Nathaniel recovered from his shock quickly, cold calculation replacing surprise. The moon bridge. he breathed, using a term I somehow understood, an ancient name for shifters who could maintain human consciousness even in wolf form. The prophecy speaks true. He gestured sharply to his soldiers. Take her alive. Kill the alpha. As they moved to obey, Cassius leaped forward, a silver-black blur of lethal intent. He took down 2 attackers before they could react, his experience evident in every calculated movement. But there were too many, and the silver weapons they carried gleamed ominously in the moonlight. I should have been terrified, should have felt lost in this new form. Instead, knowledge flowed through me, not learned, but remembered, as if my blood carried memories older than my conscious mind. I moved to Cassius's side, our bodies falling naturally into complementary positions. Where he was power and aggression, I was speed and agility. Together, we created a defensive formation that kept Nathaniel's soldiers at bay, despite their superior numbers. Impressive, Nathaniel commented from beyond the fray, content to let his subordinates take the risks, but ultimately futile. The fortress has fallen. Your remaining pack members flee or submit. This resistance only delays the inevitable. As he spoke, more of his soldiers poured into the chamber, tightening the circle around us. Cassius pressed closer to my side, his intent clear even without words. He would die before letting them take me. Seraphina hung back, her expression conflicted as she watched her betrayal unfold. When our eyes met across the chamber, something passed between us, not forgiveness, but recognition. She had made her choice believing she was securing her own survival. Now, seeing Nathaniel's cold-blooded calculation, doubt had begun to creep in. Enough games, Nathaniel snapped, impatient with the stalemate. He stepped forward, shifting as he moved, his wolf form massive and white as snow, with those same ice-blue eyes that promised no mercy. The fight that followed was brutal and swift. Cassius met Nathaniel's charge head-on, the 2 alpha wolves locked in a battle that had been brewing for generations. They were evenly matched in size and strength, but Cassius fought with the desperation of one defending everything he loved, while Nathaniel carried the cold precision of ambition. I fought my own battles, instinct guiding me as I evaded silver blades and slashing claws. My smaller size became an advantage, allowing me to slip past defenses and strike where least expected. But with each passing moment, exhaustion crept closer. I was newly shifted, untrained, and outnumbered. A pained yelp drew my attention to Cassius, who had been driven to one knee by Nathaniel's relentless assault. Blood darkened his silver-black fur where a silver weapon had found its mark. Despite the wound, he struggled to rise, refusing to yield. Something snapped within me at the sight. Protective instinct, yes, but also something deeper. In the days since my abduction, Cassius had shown me more truth, more respect, than I'd known in years of village life. He had seen me when I was invisible, valued me when I thought myself worthless. The pendant's mark on my chest flared with sudden heat as anger and determination surged through me. I launched myself toward the battling alphas, not in blind fury, but with calculated intent. As Nathaniel reared back for a killing blow, I slipped between them, my smaller form a shield before Cassius's larger one. Nathaniel hesitated, unwilling to risk harming the prophecy's fulcrum. That moment of hesitation was all we needed. I didn't consciously know what to do next, but my body, or perhaps the ancient blood now fully awakened within me, did. The mark on my chest brightened until its light filled the chamber, blue-white and blinding. With it came a wave of energy that rippled outward, touching every shifter present. The fighting stopped as all found themselves momentarily frozen, caught in the grip of power older than pack rivalries or prophetic interpretations. In that suspended moment, I felt connected to each of them, sensed their fears, their loyalties, the wounds both physical and spiritual that drove their actions. Most surprising was what I sensed from Nathaniel. Not just cold ambition, but genuine belief that his path was necessary for shifter survival. Beneath his cruelty lay fear that humans would eventually hunt their kind to extinction, fear that accommodating human society as Cassius advocated would dilute what made them strong. "This is not the way," I spoke, my voice carrying in the silence, somehow understandable despite my wolf form. "Destroying each other only hastens what you fear." The light receded, freeing them from its hold, But the connection remained, a bridge between minds as well as worlds. Even Nathaniel seemed shaken by what had transpired, his wolf form less certain in its stance. "What are you?" he asked, the question stripped of its earlier menace. I shifted back to human form, the transformation smoother than the first, leaving me standing bare but unashamed in the center of the heart chamber. The pendant returned to its physical form, hanging between my collarbones, still glowing softly. "I am what both of you needed," I answered, looking between him and Cassius, who had also returned to human form, his wounded shoulder still bleeding sluggishly. "Not a weapon for either side, but a reminder of what you once shared." Understanding dawned in Cassius's eyes. "The original packs," he said softly. "Before the divisions." I nodded, knowledge continuing to flow from some ancient source. Shifters and humans weren't always separated, nor were the packs divided against each other. There was a time when balance existed, when those with my bloodline served as intermediaries, bridges between worlds. "Fairy tales," Nathaniel scoffed, though with less conviction than before. "The strong survive. The weak submit or perish. That is nature's law." "Is it?" I challenged. "Look around you. Your strength has won you a broken fortress, a resentful populace, and enemies who will never stop fighting. How long before another rises to challenge you, using the same justification? How is that survival?" Seraphina stepped forward, her calculating mind already adapting to the shifting landscape of power. "The girl speaks truth," she said, addressing both alphas. "This endless cycle weakens us all, while humans grow stronger, more numerous." "And what alternative do you propose?" Nathaniel demanded, his ice blue eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Alliance," Cassius answered, standing straighter despite his injury. "Not submission, not dominance, partnership." He looked at me with newfound understanding. That's what the prophecy meant by uniting or destroying, not choosing one pack over another, but choosing whether packs themselves would continue to exist. The chamber fell silent, as the weight of this interpretation settled over all present. Even Nathaniel's most loyal soldiers exchanged uncertain glances, the promise of endless war suddenly less appealing than the possibility of lasting peace. "It won't be easy," I acknowledged, looking from face to face. "Generations of hostility don't disappear overnight, but the alternative is mutual destruction." Nathaniel's expression remained guarded, but something had changed in his eyes, calculation giving way to consideration. "And what role does the bridge play in this alliance?" "The same role we always played," I answered, the plural coming naturally as I acknowledged the legacy I'd inherited. Mediator, healer, reminder of what binds rather than divides. Dawnlight began to filter through the opening in the ceiling, replacing the full moon's glow. With it came reports from above. The fighting had ceased as word spread of what had occurred in the heart chamber. Shifters from both packs waited in uneasy truce for their alpha's next commands. What followed was not a simple surrender or an immediate brotherhood. Nathaniel remained proud, suspicious, reluctant to abandon generations of belief. Cassius, though more open to change, harbored justifiable anger over the attack and the lives lost. But the seed had been planted, a possibility neither had truly considered before. As the sun rose fully, casting long shadows across the ancient stone circle, provisional terms were negotiated. Nathaniel would withdraw his forces. A council would be formed with representatives from both packs to address long-standing grievances. And I would remain, not as prisoner or prize, but as the bridge promised by prophecy. "You'll stay, then?" Cassius asked when we finally had a moment alone, his voice carefully neutral despite the hope evident in his eyes. "I need to check on my grandmother first," I replied. "Ensure she's safe. Explain what's happened." I met his gaze steadily. "But yes, I'll return. This is where I belong. Where I've always belonged, though I didn't know it." His hand found mine, warm and certain. "I knew from the moment I caught your scent in the forest. Not because of prophecies or politics, but because something in me recognized something in you. The truth my mother wanted me to remember," I said softly. "Lyrian was from my pack originally," Cassius explained, confirming what I'd begun to suspect. "She disappeared during a border dispute with Nathaniel's father. We thought her dead, but she must have escaped to your village, hiding her nature to protect you. So many pieces falling into place. My mother's warnings, my grandmother's careful lessons in invisibility, the pendant that had guided me home to a place I'd never known. I wasn't caught between worlds. I was meant to bridge them. In the weeks that followed, much changed. I journeyed to my village with a small honor guard, finding my grandmother anxious but unharmed. Explaining what, I was proved easier than expected. She had known all along, helping my mother keep me safe until the time was right. She chose to remain in the village, too set in her human ways to adapt to life among shifters. But she blessed my decision to return to the fortress, recognizing that I had found my purpose. The integration of the packs progressed slowly, marked by setbacks and lingering mistrust. Serafina, ever the survivor, found ways to make herself valuable in the new order, though neither Cassius nor I ever fully trusted her again. Nathaniel maintained his own territory, but participated in the council, his pragmatic nature eventually accepting the benefits of alliance over endless conflict. And Cassius and I, we grew closer as seasons turned, our bond deepening from mutual respect to something neither of us had dared hope for. The Alpha King, who had kidnapped me believing I might be the key to his survival, discovered instead that I was the key to his heart. On the anniversary of my first shift, we stood again in the Heart Chamber, this time surrounded by members of both packs in peaceful celebration. As Cassius took my hand before witnesses, formally recognizing me as his mate and equal, I felt my pendant warm against my skin, my mother's blessing from wherever she had gone. I had been kidnapped by a ruthless Alpha King, taken from everything familiar and thrust into a world of power and danger. But in losing my old life, I had found my true self, not a village girl hiding in shadows, but a bridge between worlds, strong in ways I'd never imagined. And in the process, I had indeed stolen the heart of the king who had claimed me, just as he had stolen mine.